All right. Hello, everybody.
Stick removed from
I'm going to mute everyone. We're going to kind of just jump in here and get started, and there will be time toward the end to ask questions. So I'd love to get to know everybody who's here. Of course, this is being recorded, so people can watch it later. And yeah, without further ado, I'm just gonna go ahead and get going. Thanks for being here. So my name is Dr. Matthew Hicks. I'm the founder of Synaptic Institute. And let me get my slides to go here. And we're going to be joined here in a moment by Dr. Giguere as well here. But just to give a little overview of how we're going to spend this time together. We're going to introduce ourselves and a little bit about the program. And also, Olivia, will you admit people when they show up in the waiting room? Thank you. And then we're going to give a brief overview of Measure 109. And I'm not going to go into a ton of detail about it because there's other resources to do that. And so we'll point to some of those. And then we'll spend the most of the time talking about our particular program, some of our sort of pedagogy, and then plenty of time for questions at the end to see if we might be a good fit for you for your training. So a little bit about me. I'm from Kansas City. I am a veteran of the Army National Guard. I spent a year in Kosovo. I did military intelligence when I was there, and ultimately decided to become a healthcare provider and became a naturopathic doctor. I also love research, so I did a master's degree in integrative medical research, and did almost another master's degree in just mental health. That was always my focus of in terms of what I wanted to treat and kind of specialize in. And after graduating, I did a residency and went on to do the California Institute of Integral Studies, or CIIS, if you've heard of that, their program in psychedelic assisted therapy and research, which included the MAPS, MDMA training. I went on to do Polaris Insight Center's ketamine training. And it was back in 2020 that I started Synaptic Institute. It used to be called Synaptic Integrative Care and Training Institute, and we just shortened it to Institute. And also just this last year, got fully approved as a nonprofit. So we're now operating as a nonprofit. And I'll come back around a little bit to say some of our kind of philosophical underpinnings and mission vision statements, but wanted to just kind of start there and stop talking for a minute so Dr. Giguere can introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. So great to see so many of you here with us today. So I'll just give a little bit of background on myself. My name is Dr. Olivia Giguere. I have lived in Portland since about 2009. I originally grew up in the mountains of California, in the town of Mammoth Lakes. But since moving here, I've completed all of my higher education here. I went to Lewis and Clark College, where I got my bachelor's in molecular biology and biochemistry, after which I did quite a bit of research as an intern before finally landing on the fact that I really did want to become a clinician and a doctor. It felt much better for me to be working one-on-one with people as opposed to in a lab, but I'm glad I had that experience. So after that, I went on to complete my doctorate in naturopathic medicine at the National University of Natural Medicine here in Portland. I also have a degree in massage therapy. I completed the ketamine assisted therapy program here at Synaptic last year. I'm currently in the Psilocybin Facilitator training program, and I joined Synaptic as a clinician last year. And now I'm helping to direct the entheogenic medicine training program. We can move forward. So I'm just going to briefly introduce and do an overview of the Oregon Psilocybin Services Program and Measure 109 at this point in time. But this first slide is just to show you kind of the front page of the Oregon Psilocybin Services website. This is going to be a great resource for any of you who are interested in receiving services, if you're interested in becoming a facilitator, things like that. There's a wealth of information on here. So I won't dive into anything too deeply because all of this is available there. But yeah, you can get the full text of the measure, all of the rules. You can check for updates here. You can apply for the 5 different types of licensure. And this is just to also show that Oregon Psilocybin Services is ultimately governed by the Oregon Health Authority as well, and all of its members are selected by the Office of the Governor. We can move forward. All right, so just a brief overview of Measure 109 itself. So there is no recreational sale of psilocybin. What this measure allows is clients 21 years of age or older, regardless of motivation, to have a psilocybin experience under the supervision of a licensed facilitator. Our program trains these licensed facilitators. No diagnosis is required, and it is not considered therapy by the state. Each municipality within the state of Oregon is permitted to ban these services within their jurisdiction. So there are different counties that can opt out of these services, many of which have at this point. Microdosing is also allowed under this law, and the different rules have attempted to accommodate this somewhat. It's a little bit different, but again, like the taking of any psilocybin has to be done at a regulated service center. Prior to the actual psilocybin experience, the facilitators need to have a intake as well as we just lost the slides. Matthew, if you could bring those back up. But the facilitators will have an intake interview with the clients. They'll also have a preparation visit with the clients, and then they are required to offer an integration session afterwards. However, the integration session is optional to the client receiving the psilocybin. Okay, we can move on to the next. So the Oregon Psilocybin Advisory Board is now Oregon Psilocybin Services, which I've been referring to. And there are 4 different types of licenses that they offer. One is a manufacturing license. So this is given to the people who are growing the psilocybin mushrooms. There's a laboratory license. These are the people who are testing those mushrooms for psilocybin content. There's service center licenses, which are the places where people will have to go in order to have a psilocybin experience. And then there are licenses for facilitators. These are the individuals who are watching over the clients during the journey. So some more information on the license holders specifically. So until 2025, all of the license holders must have been Oregon residents for at least 2 years. OPS did this in order to prevent a huge influx of people from out of state coming in to provide these services, trying to keep it more local right off the bat. The measure passed a little more than 2 years ago, but it went into a 2-year developmental period, and the full law took effect just this past January 2023. The rules were finalized at the end of December. Now we're starting to see our first cohorts graduating and first licenses being awarded by OPS. Other provisions: no individual or group can own more than 5 service centers or more than 1 manufacturing facility. And the ownership of businesses holding licenses must be 50% or greater by Oregon residents. So again, trying to prevent this huge influx. So with Measure 109 being rolled out completely at the beginning of this year, all licenses can be applied for at this point in time. If you go to the OPS website, they provide real-time data on how many applications have been started, how many are approved, and how many are pending. This screenshot that I have here, I just took yesterday from the website. So at this point in time, the total number of license and worker permit applications is over 300. And it looks like about 2 manufacturers have been approved at this point. 60 worker permits have been given. And there are several service centers that are in the process of finishing their application, as well as facilitator licensees as well. All right, now I'll hand it over to Matthew to get into some of the nitty-gritty of the core requirements.
All right, so there are a certain set of minimum requirements that are going to apply to any and all training programs. For a licensed facilitator, they have to go through. So one of those licenses is the Facilitator 1. And another one is to be a licensed provider of that training. So we are one of those licensed providers of training. And so our program, for example, meets and somewhat exceeds some of these requirements. But just to be clear, what's on this slide is going to apply to all the training programs. And that includes 120 what they're calling core training hours. So you can kind of think of that as the didactic portion, like course material that they're going through, and then 40 practicum hours. And I'll say a little bit more about what those mean. The core training you can waive up to 40% of those 120 hours for prior experience. It's sort of up to the schools to determine what qualifies as a prior experience, and there are some exceptions to it. For example, you cannot waive the ethics material or the equity content, as well as anything that is specific to the Oregon Psilocybin Services law. And then there's also at least 50% of online learning has to be live. So it can't be all pre-recorded stuff. At least 50% of anything online has to be live, or synchronous is the term that they use. Those 40 practicum hours are divided into 30 hours of what they call direct practicum, which just mean like some sort of experiential component, and then 10 hours of consultation. So that means you have an experienced supervisor of some sort that the school has designated as being experienced, or can kind of give you the stamp of approval that your learning process is complete, kind of at the end of it. So yeah, it's a little bit, they haven't given like clear direct definitions of what practicum is, so we're seeing different programs offer different solutions to give you that those 30 hours. Obviously most people are wanting to do psilocybin. Up to this point there hasn't been there's still, as of today, no legal service centers that have been approved. So others have done ketamine, they've done breath work, they've counted like harm reduction work, those sort of things as practicum, sort of as proxy for, or substitutions for psilocybin experience, guiding experience. So that's going to vary a little bit from program to program. Obviously, with the intended goal that someday you'll be able to train doing psilocybin, which is what you're being trained to do. The The core training, that's that 120 hours, is divided into these 9 modules, and each of the modules has its own required number of hours devoted to it. So 12 hours in the category of historical, traditional, and contemporary plant medicine practices and applications, 12 hours of diversity, equity, and inclusion, which can't be waived. Ethics and responsibility of a facilitator is also 12 hours, which can also not be waived. And then the psilocybin pharmacy, neuroscience, and clinical research is a minimum of 4 hours. Core facilitation skills is 16. Preparation and orientation is another 16. Administration sessions is 20 hours, and then integration is 12, and group sessions, which includes preparation, intake, administration, integration, and in a group context is another 16 hours. So that all totals up to 120. Now, one of the things that happened when this law passed, when any new law passes, it goes to the Department of Justice at some point, and they review the law and say, where might this new law interact with existing laws? And what they found was that the Oregon Psilocybin Services Act required people to do training, which meant they had to go through some sort of accredited process. People had to go through a training program. They said, well, this makes it subject to this other law, which is related to, I forget the number of the law, it doesn't matter, but it's the Higher Education Coordination Commission. It puts it in their jurisdiction to go through to be in a licensed profession, to require training for it. It has to be accredited by them. So this was kind of delayed the whole training programs getting launched and started, but it also made it expensive and cumbersome. But honestly, in my opinion, it made the programs better, more rigorous in their policies and procedures, and just being not overlooked, but properly assessed for quality. And so all the schools that you can enroll in now have gone through both processes. The Oregon Health Authority has vetted them that they are in accordance with the OPS rules. And then they have also been through the HEC for short, Higher Education Coordination Commission accredited. So they have those 2 levels of accreditation. The ones that you can apply to, there's been like 20 or more schools that are OHA approved, but only 10 of them have gone through HEC. So there should only be 10 that you can actually enroll in at this point. All right, now we're going to transition to just talking about Synaptics program in particular. And we, as a faculty, the program, which I'm going to talk about the faculty here in a moment, but we got together and came up with the following mission statement. We envision a world with a widespread network of highly skilled practitioners providing care and connection to self, others, and the world at large. Our mission is to cultivate skillful, ethical, and socially responsible practitioners of entheogenic medicine rooted in holism, traditional wisdom, and science. And, I want to take just a moment to just emphasize our use of this term entheogen rather than psychedelic. I have no problem with the term psychedelic, but we chose to use the term entheogen because we really recognize the inherent spiritual nature of doing this type of work, and we don't want to shy away from that. So we have scientists who have doctorate degrees and conduct clinical research, and we have a deep respect for that. Excuse me. And that way of knowing and deriving, some degree of truth and factuality about how the world operates and how healing works and whatnot. And so we try to balance that, often through peer-reviewed journal club where we're really looking at evidence. So you will get training in that. but we also respect that that's not the whole picture. And just like a psychedelic experience kind of opens your eyes to see things on a more spiritual realm, and that's where a lot of the healing happens. We look to, traditional wisdom and traditional ways of knowing. And so we wanted to reflect that, this isn't strictly speaking a one way of solving, mental, emotional problems. It's a holistic one where we're looking at things from a holistic perspective. And so we try to encapsulate that as best we could in this statement. But just want to be clear about that. This is not, we're not, rooted in any one particular tradition, in the sense that we're just going to preach Buddhism to you, or just shamanism, or any one tradition. But we're also not purely secular, in the sense that we're removing all spiritual terminology in an effort to not offend anyone. We're trying to give multiple perspectives here. That's our goal, to make it balanced. So, and I kind of just summarized what this slide says, which is trying to strive that balance between, reductionistic science, which has its value but is not the whole picture, and also, not just sort of accepting any story, which can kind of lead to spiritual bypassing and sometimes some loosely held beliefs that can be misleading. And so we're trying to find that middle way between the two, and give lots of perspectives. So we're going to present some Buddhism as part of this program. We also have influences from Kundalini traditions of yoga. We are presenting Rastafari. We have a Rastafarian facilitator who presents his philosophy, and have a retreat actually that you can join down in Jamaica to kind of be rooted in that tradition. We have indigenous facilitators who are giving you their perspective, and as well as broader classes and just transpersonal psychology, and as well as just Western kind of scientific perspectives and psychology as well. So trying to give a really well-rounded experience. Let's see. So, and with those things in mind, we also recognize that simply having a degree or being a licensed professional does not inherently make you the best person to do this type of work. And so we don't require, this is a program that is open to people with different backgrounds. And we're looking really for a quality of being that we find most pointed. Now, someone who has dedicated their life to a healing profession, like psychotherapist or a doctor who's done lots of training, is certainly an indicator of dedication to that path of helping and healing people. But there are other paths to that, so we recognize that, and have the program open to anyone who we feel is shares those values. So we also wanted to make this a personal growth journey. You may or may not make any money as a facilitator, as a profession. We can't promise that. There's a lot of unknowns right now, which we should also just disclose, in the sense that especially with Measure 109, and there's limited number of service centers that are available right now. This may not be a lucrative path to keep your day jobs while you're going through the program and while you're starting your facilitator career. We're not trying to mislead anyone in that, but we also want to make through the program, this is going to be a deep, personal journey for everyone who goes through it. So that's not without merit just in and of itself, regardless of whether or not you ever take anybody's money in exchange for services. So, and it's also an opportunity to connect to community, to be part of this community, but also the wider psychedelic community, entheogenic community. So we have a commitment to, ethics and integrity and inclusiveness. And we're trying to do this in a way that is collaborative rather than competitive. There's a lot of, hype, obviously, around psychedelics, and a lot of people trying to jump onto this as an opportunity. Our approach to running our organization, and the reason we chose to be a nonprofit, is to avoid the worst of that. Of course, we can't avoid the fact that we ourselves need to make money to do what we do. Our rent is also due, like everyone else's, and money needs to be made and whatnot. But we don't want to be overly competitive, because we share this core mission of really helping to reduce the suffering in the world is our goal. So we could go into a longer spiel about that, but I'll just leave it at that for now. And then just a couple more words from me before I hand it back over to Olivia, is just to point to our faculty. This is most of it, although I think we have a few people that is not on this list immediately, but we've made a really intentional effort to make it as gender balanced as we can. We have a good ratio of male to female instructors in the program. We've got some diversity in the faculty as well, not only in ethnic backgrounds, but also we have a few queer people. We have people with different professional backgrounds, to include scientists, psychotherapists, physicians, different types of physicians, but also some indigenous and unlicensed professionals who've been working in the underground for a long time in this country and other countries. And we're mostly local to the Northwest, at least, but we have some experts from outside of our region as well who are collaborating. So I'm really proud of the faculty we have, and they're pretty stoked to be offering this. So happy to take questions about that. Olivia, do you want to take the next few slides?
Yeah, I would be happy to. All right, so Matthew did a great job talking about our core values and mission, and really the intention that drives this program. And now I'm going to be getting into more of the minutia of what it's going to actually look like to complete the program itself. So as part of our core training, there is going to be 28 hours of content that we have pre-recorded. This you'll be accessing online and watching, and then completing quizzes after you've watched the video, just to show that you've passed and you're comprehending the material. There are also going to be 70 hours of the program presented as live synchronous online lectures, with a lot of discussion, breakout groups, a lot of time to ask questions of all of our faculty. And associated with this, there's going to be both required and suggested readings that was given to us by each of the faculty members. We are also going to have 2 in-person gatherings. One is going to open up this entire next cohort. It will be starting on August 30th, and that will be a 3-night, 4-day retreat here just a bit south of Portland, Oregon. And our final retreat will close the entire program at the beginning of March 2024. And that's going to be a 1-day workshop, followed by a graduation ceremony at the end of it. And this day will really be used to wrap up the program and to fill in any gaps that people might feel that they need more training in at that point in time. All of our students are going to be put into home groups of 4 people for the duration of the program. This will just give you a home base to work with, and a supervisor to be your main person to ask questions to go to for help, to go to for support as you move through this. As Matthew said, this is a deeply, deeply personal journey. It's not just learning a bunch of information. It's a very transformative process. But we also want you to be able to engage with the rest of the cohort as well as one large group. So a lot of that will get started off with our 4-day retreat at the beginning of this next program. One of the other things that we offer, which is different than the other programs, is something called a journal club. So students of our program are required to attend 14 of these and then present at one of the meetings. So these are held for 1 hour every week, usually on a Friday lunch hour. And what we're doing is we're presenting peer-reviewed research to one another. There's so much research coming out right now in the world of psychedelic medicine. It's so difficult to keep up with it as just a single individual. So it's really nice to come together as a group to help teach one another and learn from one another about the research that's coming out, and then discuss any questions about it and how we can actually apply this research to our practices. Here is an overview of our schedule. So on May 1st, in just a couple of weeks, students will be getting their first acceptance letters to the program. At this point in time, you can start the pre-recorded content. So this could really give you a leg up and time to sit with the material in a way that's not very rushed. Again, so you could start as early as May 1st. And again, we'll all be ending with the graduation ceremony on March 2nd in 2024. However, our first in-person retreat, as I said, will be in August 30th through September 2nd. So this is going to be during, part of a week, and then you'll have a Labor Day weekend to help process and integrate all of the things that you're going to be learning, all of the things you'll be exposed to at our first retreat. This is a picture actually of part of the retreat center that we rent in Eagle Creek here in Oregon. It's absolutely beautiful. It's a lovely sanctuary to just really sink into as we start this work. The next thing that we have going will be, sorry, you could just go back to the last slide one more time. We're going to have weekly online Wednesday night class meetings. So this will be for 1 hour, 1.5 hours from 6:30 to 8 p.m. starting August 26th. We'll give you some free information prior to heading into that first retreat. These will go all the way through February with a couple of breaks in there. And this just allows us to meet as a cohort on a weekly basis, continue checking in with one another so that nobody starts to feel too isolated or afloat in their own work. Again, there will be the 14 journal clubs that you'll all be required to attend, even though many more will be offered than that. Those will also be weekly. And in order to complete the rest of those 78 hours of online synchronous learning, we'll have 4 online Saturdays. So these will be from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. with a lunch break, only 4 throughout the entire program. And that will just allow us to really pack in some more robust learning. And finally, we'll wrap it all up in March. All right, and I'll turn it back over to you, Matthew, to talk about some more specifics.
All right. So one of the ways that we are exceeding those minimums that I was sharing about before is we, while the state program requires a minimum of 40 practicum hours, we feel that that is woefully insufficient to really produce well experienced practitioners. So we have increased that to 100 hours, and those. And so we've broken those down into kind of 3 categories. The first one we're calling personal cultivation, and this is something we're not actually offering, ourselves, but we're requiring you to do some of your own work during your time in the program. And so those 20 hours you will log and have your therapist, your coach, your facilitator initial like a form and saying, yeah, yes, you completed, X number of hours of your own work. And so you'd be surprised how many people apply to these programs having never experienced a psychedelic before, or who have never been in psychotherapy before, or have never received professional services. And while we include a lot of personal growth in the program, we are not here to be your therapist or to be your facilitator. Although you'll have some experiences with us, and a lot of that sort of happens naturally, we really want you to have those experiences and do your own work, because that's the really core thing that every practitioner really needs to be doing throughout their entire career, is to know yourself really well, and being more aware of your own stuff. You're better able to serve your clients. And so we're requiring those 20 hours. The cost of those 20 hours doesn't have to cost you anything. If you have something else you do already, it's covered by insurance or whatever, that's fine. We're not charging you anything for those 20 hours, but you have to complete them during the time of your enrollment in our program. The other 40-hour practicum, this is, we're going to make a few options available to you for this. So we right now are offering 3 options. One is a week-long retreat in Jamaica. Another is another week-long, I think it's 8 days, in Mexico. And the other one is a local option here in Oregon, a service center that will be up and running in the next couple months. And that one will be essentially you'll receive exactly the psilocybin services we're training you to provide. So there's a lot more to be said about what's included in all of those. It doesn't include your travel expenses. It just includes the program itself. In the case of the international retreats, it includes the cost includes the accommodations, but in the one in Oregon, it does not. If you have to travel to Hood River is where that one will be located. So you can go to our retreats page on our website on synaptic.institute. There's a retreats page. And so the other thing I'll say about that is where the cost will be separate. And so you'll pay a fee for the didactic portion of the training program, and also be required to complete one of these retreats, but you'll be charged separately for it. And so we can say more about that if you have questions. But the other 40 hours, bringing us all the way to 100, is the apprenticeship. Again, this is something we are not charging you for it. And you should think of this as sort of an unpaid internship of sorts, but we are going to help you pair with an experienced practitioner. And the idea is you are shadowing them or assisting them. So these mentors should not necessarily charge you a fee for it. It should be, like I said, an unpaid internship sort of arrangement, but it's a really crucial way for you to gain more experience, seeing an experienced professional doing the work, whether it's groups or one-on-ones. And we'll have, experienced professionals available. We have a list available. If you have someone else that you'd like us to vet for you and develop sort of a relationship with, we can, consider adding some other people as an option. But that's the apprenticeship in a nutshell, bringing it to 100 total hours, which really ought to be even more. Ought to be 200 or 1,000 hours is what most psychotherapists do to get fully licensed. But as a bare minimum, we've set it to be 100. All right. So I mentioned some of the costs. There's a $25 application fee, and that you can do on our website, synaptic.institute. If you're accepted, it's a $150 enrollment fee. Neither of those fees are refundable. But then once accepted, there is the $6,000 fee for the didactic portion of it. And there's a whole refund policy and all of that. You'll have to read the course catalog and the enrollment agreement to see that. I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty here when our time is short, but There are also a few scholarships available. It's pretty limited through the Sherry Eckert Foundation and the Healing Advocacy Fund. Those have a deadline of June 5th. So you need to apply as soon as possible, especially if you're interested in a scholarship, because it's pretty limited, the number of scholarships we'll be able to offer. So that'll cover the didactic portion, but then, as I said, the experiential portion is separate. So those retreats range from 2,000 to actually they go up into like 3,000 or more, depending on your sort of rooming needs. If you want, you know, a room to yourself, for example, then the cost is a little bit higher, but yeah, and those will have also a separate cancellation policy, because it's just a little bit harder to fill a spot, you know, on a retreat. But let's see what else is pertinent to there. We can split the cost up into a couple payments, so you'll be able to do a couple payments for kind of a financing fee that will charge $100 there. And then, you know, you can save some money by doing an ACH transaction, a checking account transaction, versus a credit card processing fee. And I think that pretty much covers it in terms of costs and whatnot. To apply, you'll need to have a CV or a resume included in the application, so you might prepare that before you get started. You'll need a letter of recommendation. That's holds people up a little bit. You can have that prepared. And my piece of advice to anyone ever using a letter of recommendation is to really write it for yourself, and then like ask someone to edit it for you. Or, you know, you can have them write it from scratch if you want, but have that prepared. It's easiest if you just upload it in your application, so we have it all at once. You can have them send it to us separately if you choose. Then also a cover letter. A cover letter is an opportunity for you to say the stuff that doesn't necessarily come across on your resume. Don't simply regurgitate what's already on your resume. Tell us a little bit about your story and why you want to do this work, why you want to be a part of Synaptic over other training opportunities, for example. Whatever you want to share with us is fine in a cover letter, but just yeah, say what you want to say to maybe stand out a little bit. We've already begun interviewing people, and yeah, like we said, we'll start the enrollment process on May 1st until all of our seats are filled. And when you enroll, you can start with our pre-recorded content, and if you start soon enough, you could be done with the pre-recorded stuff by the time August comes around, and we begin the sort of live lecture courses, and then be done you know, by next March. The retreat options are pretty much all in the fall. So again, go to Olivia put it in the chat, the synaptic.institute/retreats option for more details on that. Yeah, and I think that's pretty much it. There's, you know, we have the opportunity to nominate 2 people to Healing Advocacy Fund scholarships, which, you know, out of 30 people is not a lot, but it's what they have to offer. Sherry Eckert Foundation is, you know, they're trying to come up with more scholarship funds to offer people, but, you know, they're limited as well. So that's what we have to say about scholarships. And that's pretty much it. The first retreat in person will be August 30th in Eagle Creek, and that's another image of the retreat center there. So I think at this point, we will open it up to questions, and I'm going to stop sharing screen in a minute, but if you want to save that email address, that's where you can send specific questions, or if you think of a question a few days from now, send it to us there. And before we just open it up generally, I'll just turn it back over to Olivia if there's anything you have to add or anything I forgot.
No, I don't think so. I think that was pretty thorough.
Okay. Well,
You know,
so thank you everyone for being here. You can either type your questions into the chat or unmute yourself or raise your hand. Let's do that. Raise your hand if you'd like to just verbalize your question. Otherwise, you can type it into the chat. Someone has just asked, can you elaborate a little bit about the recommendation letter? The recommendation letter should really just come from somebody who you're not related to, who has been ideally in some sort of supervisory role over you. So whether that's a past teacher, a boss, could be a colleague too. That's fine. Generally, someone with some supervisory experience with you is better. Could be, yeah. I mean, we're not like super strict about it. It's just an opportunity to, yeah, demonstrate that someone has spent some time and seen you in some capacity go through maybe some challenges. They've seen you work, they've seen your work ethic, that sort of thing, and can comment on it. But important that they don't have a conflict of interest. So it's not like someone you're trying to go into business with, or your partner. We've gotten some of those in the past and had people, we had to ask people to send us, additional letters of recommendation. So does that help give some guidance or any? Okay, cool. You want to take the next question, Olivia?
Yeah. So it looks like Evelyn is asking for more information about service centers opening up, like the one that we mentioned in Hood River. Yeah. So, I'd be curious, Evelyn, you're welcome to, turn your mic on and speak up exactly what you're curious about with regard to the service centers. None are currently open. They're still in the process of getting licensed and approved by OPS. But these will be the places where you would work as a facilitator. This is a big difference between psilocybin versus like cannabis in Oregon, where here in Oregon, you can go to a dispensary and you can purchase cannabis if you're over the age of 21, and then you can leave with it and do it on your own time. Here in Oregon, you're going to need to go to a service center, purchase the psilocybin there the day of, and then take the entire amount and sit under the watch of a facilitator, which you would all be training to do, and then leave once that experience is complete.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and the one particularly that we're working with in Hood River is being started by a graduate of our first cohort, and it's called Vital Reset. And yeah, they're hoping to be licensed by the end of next month, but it'll probably be at least by this summer at some point they'll be available. And so they'll be hosting us. We'll have our more experienced faculty actually guiding the experiential practicums that we're offering through them, but we're using their service center because we don't have our own. We've decided not to start that up. It's a cumbersome process to start a service center. It's a lot of work, and so we're just going to kind of stay in the training world for now. But yeah, that's a little bit about that. So thanks for the question. Let's see. Can you recommend a letter by your therapist? I would say your therapist has a conflict of interest. I don't know if conflict of interest is the best term to use, but I would say better that it come from someone who has had some supervisory oversight of you. So you've worked with them and they've seen you interact with people in kind of a not necessarily a non-therapeutic space, but not your own therapeutic space.
yeah, so better it come from a mentor or colleague, supervisor. Yeah. So it looks like the next question is from someone who's being certified through a different program. but the options for psychedelic experience don't work with that person's schedule. Would we be willing to take on outside participants? So I would ask you to contact us personally with regard to this. However, when Synthesis shut down, we were able to take on several of their students and incorporate them into our curriculum, but we needed to work with all of them on a case-by-case basis. However, our retreats are open to people from outside programs as well.
Yeah.
So yes, I think we'd be able to help you.
Yeah, it'd be up to your the program that from which you want to graduate. If they want to accept our practicum, I think they would. I think we, I have good relationships with people who are instructors in other programs, and if they, did a practicum retreat with someone that I trusted anyway, we would accept that most likely. I mean, we'd have to, spend some time. Maybe even charge some sort of like transfer fee, just because it takes time to understand what you went through and how many hours were spent and that sort of, there's a vetting process we need to do. But we're open to that, and our retreats are open to people in other programs. So you could definitely come on our retreat if it works for you, if you just like the sound of it better, or if it's schedule, whatever reason for it, it'd be fine. And we'll provide you some sort of transcript with a description and the number of hours you spent with us and that sort of thing. I hope that answers your question. And then, Heather asks, is the apprenticeship expected to be completed before the March graduation? It's a good question. And no, not necessarily. We have our graduation requirements, but they don't necessarily have a deadline. You can kind of complete them as you're able, and as time permits. You just won't get your graduate certificate until you have completed our requirements.
Right. Edward asks, does this license qualify us for credentialing by state insurance? No. Again, this is not a therapeutic or medical license. So this will not qualify you for the ability to accept insurance at this point in time. The model has not been medicalized yet.
Maybe someday.
Yeah, that would be great.
And if you hold another license as a therapist or acupuncturist or something, there's maybe, I don't want to go too into it because it's a little nitty gritty, but part of this law is that you cannot practice with a dual license. So I'm a naturopath by training and by license in the state of Oregon. When I'm facilitating someone, I cannot practice naturopathic medicine at all. Now, that's not necessarily true in other professions. Like a lot of naturopaths are also acupuncturists, for example, and they can do both things in one visit. But the Oregon or the psilocybin law states that nobody can practice dual licensure. So you can't be both. And so you wouldn't be able to charge an insurance for services you were providing if you were while facilitating a psilocybin session. So that's it's a bigger question for the statewide program. Obviously we don't have any control over that as just a training school. But let's see, what is an estimated starting salary for a facilitator? Really don't know. Some people have done some calculations on that, but we don't know. There's no data on which to estimate it at this point, because there are no service centers and no services have been offered yet. So can't really promise you anything. One thing to consider, and I said this a little bit in the beginning, is that you definitely don't want to quit your day job and expect to be a full-time facilitator doing this work right off the bat anyway. I mean, it's kind of emotionally draining work, first of all. So you might want to continue doing other things. And you know, and also it's going to be expensive. Like this service is going to be expensive. The licensing fees are really high. So once you finish a program like this, to get the license from the state, they're charging $2,000. You can get half off of that if you're a person of color, if you're a veteran, and if you're on Medicaid or some other like kind of social welfare program that you can demonstrate, you know, being low income. So or as a nonprofit, but that won't even apply because we're a nonprofit. And well, anyway, that's a complicated whole other story. But it's expensive, and all of those costs of getting a license for a service center and for the psilocybin itself, which is going to be a whole separate fee, it's going to be pricey. And there's questions about who will be able to afford the service. And so anyway, I just say that to attempt to answer the question, or really just to say that I don't know exactly how much can be made on this. I wouldn't expect to just make a complete quick career change to doing this work right off the bat. It'll be a process. As the program, like on a state level, I mean, the Measure 109 sort of, you know, it's going to take some time for it to mature over time, and you know, we might be able to answer that question 5 years from now.
So the next question that Lisa asked, is there a mechanism of gaining credit for classes if you have experience or expertise? Yes, it looks like you are an ND, Lisa. You can get up to 40% credit, like towards those didactic hours. However, you cannot be exempted from the ethics and equity portions. But yes, that's something that we would work with you on a case-by-case basis.
Can I ask a question? So it's just follow up. Is that so? If I, for example, had some kind of expertise in pharmacology or cognizy around, would I be able to also, you know, test out or whatever of those classes as well?
Yeah, if you can, you know, demonstrate what you've taken before and it's equivalent to what we offer, yes. But it's also, there's a couple things that we're working on right now in terms of offering more modular options. In our first cohort, by necessity, just because of the cost of starting up the program, we had a policy of, we'll waive the requirements in a case like that, but we can't waive the cost of it. We don't, that was not intended to be a forever policy. We don't want to charge people for classes they're not taking. So we're trying to find ways to modify that. And we are going to be actually moving to a modular format for our classes. So people, you know, if we have people from outside of Oregon who don't care about getting an Oregon license and they just want to take our history classes, for example, we're going to be able to offer some of these things separately. So if you don't want to commit to like the whole cohort and just take some classes that you need, you can do that, as long as by the time you want to graduate, you can demonstrate that you've met all the requirements, which can include transferring credit in. We haven't set a policy around this yet exactly, but we might charge a slight fee for evaluating transfer credit. But yes, to answer your question, like that could be potentially waived. All right, we are, just out of time. This has flown by. I hope it's been informative. Any other questions that we can squeeze in here, Olivia?
The next question was if this training will be recognized across states, which I think is a good one to look into. I mean, at this point in time, you know, Oregon is the only state that has this legal model in operation at this time. However, definitely Colorado is, you know, on the tail of it. Washington, California are likely to have measures similar to this soon. So I would imagine that there will be some transferability across state lines at that point in time.
Yeah, possibly. Well, we're certainly tracking that. And, you know, as you know, they formulate their requirements in Colorado, for example. Washington is also working on a law. We'll look at what those requirements are and try to adapt our program to be, somewhat transferable. But yeah, right now we're the only, state that has a program exactly like this. So for now, it's sort of an Oregon-centered program, but we want to make it, available to people from other places as well. And on that note, and I should have had a slide for this, but we are also working with Ubiquity University, which is sort of a degree completion institute where graduates of our program can go on to get a degree, a master's degree or a PhD in entheogenic medicine. So if you complete our entire program, plus a couple electives to get you to the credits that you need, you can go on to get a graduate degree in doing this work. It doesn't give you any extra licensure, but if you're interested in a degree, it's a really fascinating opportunity. So if you want to check that out, Ubiquity University. This is very new. We're not on their website yet. Just a few weeks ago, we reached agreement with them. So that announcement will be coming out soon as it's we're ready to put up more details about it. But stay tuned. It's Ubiquity. I'll type it in here. Anything else you want to share with people, Olivia?
Not at this point in time. Edward, I do see your comment about a nonprofit designation. You're welcome to reach out to us specifically. We just skipped over that because we're more focused on talking to you all about like the facilitation, training, and licensing right now, as opposed to service center. But if you want to talk more about that, we can.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for being here. And let us know if you have questions. Reach out.
Yep, we're happy to talk. Have a great day, everyone.
All right. Bye-bye.